to start. It's Alabama week. I think everybody is in tune to that, and we sort of lose our minds during Alabama week. Um, what's the perception of the series since Saban got to Tuscaloosa? I think the national perception is that Alabama has owned this series, and they've won 13 out of 17. So it's not like you can say that they haven't dominated the series. Excuse me, 12 out of 16, and that's counting the COVID year, and that's regular season games. That's not counting the debacle in the Superdome a decade ago. But the margin of victory is not, I think, what some people would think it is. You get in this Ohio State Michigan series up until last year. Ohio State had a lot of big wins in the series. Alabama and Tennessee. Alabama had a lot of big wins in the series. The average margin of victory is 12 and a half, a little over 12 and a half. Which, okay, listen, Alabama's winning the series. I'm not trying to dispute that. Today's podcast is going to be about the history of the series. A lot of these games were closer. I went back and dug a little bit. I was either at or watched all of these games, and I was at most of them. So just kind of a little refresher. You forget that a lot of these games that you forgot about were a lot closer maybe than people thought. Like the 2008 game, Alabama was number 1, LSU was 15, and this game went to overtime. The 2012 game, the TJ Yeldon game, LSU had it. The 2014 game before the Vidal Alexander penalty, LSU had it. The 2016 game was nothing going to the fourth quarter. Even the 2017 game that LSU lost by 2 touchdowns, they outgained Alabama. A lot of these things were closer, and the point I'm kind of going for here is you do not have to be perfect to beat Alabama. And I say that because I think sometimes coaches have, I won't say outsmarted themselves, but gone to great lengths when if you just play your game, you probably got a better shot at this. And I think Mike Leach really did a job on himself last 2 weeks ago when, all of these fourth down calls and all these things. Mississippi State outgained Alabama and managed to lose the game by 24 points, which is hard to do. So and Les Miles did this in 2014 with the fake kick, and it was a awful call. It's like, look, man, you can play these guys straight up if you just play your game. Now, not everybody can do this. I mean, Vanderbilt can't do this. Missouri can't do this. Certainly none of the non-conference teams that are non-Power Fives can do this. But Southeastern Conference teams can do this and have, especially this season. So it's going through all of the things that you hear Alabama week. What does LSU have to do to win? And it's like, they've got to do all of these things perfect, or they've got no chance to win. So I came up with the 5 things that I hear the most often about what you've got to do to beat Alabama and see if they're true or not. Number 1, I hear this: you have to outgain them. If Alabama outgains you, it means that they've controlled the game, and if you don't outgain them, you can't win. You have to have great quarterback play. This one gets out there a lot, and there's ample reason for it. The Joe Burrows and Cam Newton games and Johnny Manziel games, I get it, why you would think that you have to have great quarterback play in order to beat Alabama. Hendon Hooker earlier this year. You have to stop the run, because if you don't, the Derrick Henrys and Trent Richardsons and now the Jahmyr Gibbs of the world, they're just going to run all over you. If you don't stop the run, or at least slow it down, you got no chance. You have to pressure Bryce Young, because if you don't pressure Bryce Young, you've got really no chance in this thing. And then the last one is the Tide won't beat themselves. I mean, this is not a team. This is an Nick Saban coach team. This is not a team that's going to beat themselves. So are all of those things true? Do you have to do all of those things? I took a look at the games this year. I threw out the non-conference games besides Texas. I threw out the Vanderbilt game because, like I said, Vanderbilt doesn't have the personnel to play with Alabama. And I threw the A&M game out because Bryce Young didn't play. And here's what I came up with. Against Texas, a game that Alabama won by 1 point, and Texas missed a 20-yard field goal right before the half. You have to outgain them. Nope. Texas had 9 more first downs than Alabama. Total yards were pretty much a push. They're within 3 yards of each other. Time of possession was 50-50. So Texas didn't really outgain Alabama in total yards. It was kind of a push. The time of possession was kind of a push, and they could have won the game. You have to have great QB play. Quinn Ewers was great in that game. Not really. Hudson Card played about half the game, and Quinn Ewers played the other half of the game. They were okay. 23 of 34 for 292 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. Okay. I mean, that's a nice game. That's not Johnny Manziel. It's not Cam Newton. It's not Joe Burrow, and yet they were right there. You have to stop the running game? Nope. Alabama ran for 6.7 yards a carry, and this was before Gibbs really got going. Now, he did catch 9 passes that day, but Alabama ran at will against Texas, and Texas almost beat them. You have to pressure Bryce Young. Nah, you get into a little bit. They sacked him twice. They pressured him 7 times. And outside of the 20-yard run that he had in the fourth quarter, he wasn't much of a factor in the running game, but he escaped all over the place. He bought himself time so many times. I think that you do have to get pressure on Bryce Young. I think that part is true. Alabama won't beat themselves. They have 15 penalties for 100 yards. Did a pretty good job almost beating themselves. Against Arkansas, you have to outgain them. Well, Arkansas got outgained 555 to 377. They were within 5 points to start the fourth quarter. You have to have great quarterback play. Arkansas didn't. 17 out of 34. Fortin came in for Jefferson in the second half of that game. 17 of 34, 190 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions. They were right there. You have to stop the run game. Nope. Alabama ran for 317 yards, 7.5 a carry, and Arkansas was right there in the fourth quarter. You have to pressure Bryce Young. Young left that game. Pretty average numbers before he got hurt in that game. He was 7 of 13, had a touchdown and interception. Alabama won't beat themselves. Had 101 yards in penalties and a turnover. Now, they got loose in the fourth quarter. But with all of that, Arkansas was right there. It was a 5-point game going to the fourth. Tennessee, you got to outgain them. Total yards were a wash. You have to have a great quarterback play. Hooker was great. There's no doubt about that. You have to stop the run game. Tennessee held Alabama to 3.7 yards per carry. Gibbs had 3 touchdowns, but he worked for those 103 yards. You have to pressure Bryce Young. They did. 1 sack, 9 hurries, and Young still had a brilliant day. I mean, he threw for 455 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alabama won't beat themselves. 130 yards in penalties and a turnover. Yeah, they kind of do. And Mississippi State, you have to outgain them. Nope. State outgained them. Lost the game by 24 points and outgained them. You have to have a great quarterback play. No, Will Rogers threw the ball 60 times. This is part of what I'm talking about, where the coaches think we have to do something extraordinary. You really don't. Have to stop the run. No, Mississippi State stopped the hell out of the run. Alabama had 29 yards rushing against Mississippi State, still won the game by 4 touchdowns. You have to pressure Bryce Young. Yeah. They sacked him twice and hurried him 6 times. He threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tide won't beat themselves. Well, they didn't in that game. 20 yards in penalties, no turnovers. So what does all this tell us? That most of these axioms are false. You have to outgain them. You don't. They've multiple times, I tell you, teams have played them straight up, even when they've been outgained. You got a 50-50 spot in yards. You're going to be right there. You have to have great quarterback play. Partially true. If you get great quarterback play, this is your best avenue to beat them. But Texas and Arkansas were right there with very average quarterback play. You have to stop the run. Nope. Biggest win that they had 29 yards rushing. It's not the biggest factor in their offense. You have to pressure Bryce Young. I think that this is true, but you can't over-pursue him. He's much more dangerous when he's buying himself time to throw the ball than he is when he just takes off to run. You let him sit back there in the pocket and you're asking for it. Tide won't beat themselves. False. They've committed the most penalties for the third most yards in the Southeastern Conference, and they're 11th in turnover margin. They have the fewest takeaways of any team in the league with Auburn. It's a beatable team, and it does not take a perfect effort. It does not take something extraordinary. You got to play your game. You can't go out there and turn the ball over twice on special teams. You can't get a kick blocked. You can't go out there and commit 12 penalties for 115 yards. But if you play your game, you've got every opportunity to win this thing. We've seen it multiple times this year. I just read you a whole legal pad full of stats will tell you if you just go out there and you play your game, you're going to go to the fourth quarter with a chance to win it. Jaden Daniels does not have to put himself in the 2023 Heisman race on Saturday for LSU to win. LSU does not have to hold Gibbs to 50 yards rushing. They don't have to sack Bryce Young 7 times to win. They don't have to control the clock. They've just got to go out there and play the game that they're capable of playing, and this thing's going to come down to the fourth quarter and can you make a play. I think coaches have gotten themselves at times in a bind thinking, we have to be perfect. And if you go in thinking you have to be perfect, you're probably going to psych yourself out. LSU did that in 2014, a game that they were right there to win, and Les felt like he had to do something extraordinary. Mike Leach, a couple of weeks ago, hey, we can't play these guys straight up. You kind of did on the yardstick right before you make all of these ridiculous decisions to go for it on fourth down. You have to play well. I'm not suggesting that you can just show up and beat Alabama. It's taken some great efforts to do it. But if you play your game, if LSU plays the way that they played against Florida and plays the way they played against Ole Miss, they will be in the ball game in the fourth quarter. I would prefer that they not fall down multiple scores, but it's not like it's the end of the world. There's ways to beat the Crimson Tide.